I took my kids to Disney World earlier this year. And one of the things that I noticed leading up to and during the trip is that they kept saying things like, oh, we can do this and do this, and we should do this now, and we can do this, and let's do this. And I had to remind them to slow down. We'll have time to do everything. But it's hard when there's so much to do, when there are so many possibilities, when you look at all of this stuff and it's neat. And that's how my conversation with Corey Koehler felt. We started talking about all of the ways that his AI systems have saved him time. And I want to do a new type of episode for this show that's more of a case study. But I found that AI to a lot of people is a lot like Disney World. There are so many possibilities. And so I think you'll enjoy this episode. Not because you'll come out with a super clear implement these things and these things will happen sort of vibe, but you're going to see someone who is really excited because AI has cut their time by 80%. And I got some really good ideas, and I know you will too. So I hope you enjoy this episode with Corey Koehler, where we talk all about ChatGPT and Claude projects and how we are using them to be more efficient so that we can do things like spend time with our family. All right, I am here with Corey Koehler. Corey is a longtime solopreneur and founder of Redefining Retirement.io, where he helps Gen X creators and consultants turn their knowledge into job-free income using newsletters, automation, and AI. And Corey has the dubious honor of being the first interview for this new case study format I'm trying here on Streamline Solopreneur. Corey, how are you today?
Well, I am doing just fine. No complaints here. Any complaint would be a first world problem, and we don't really have to talk about that. So
I like that. I like that point of view. I try to think about that myself as well. It's like my kids will complain about something, and I'm like, life is very hard for you. But they're like 8 and younger, so they don't know anything else. Okay, cool. So first of all, I did a brief intro of your business, but can you tell us a little bit about like how you run your business day to day? Like, what are the things you do for it? How do you get clients? And just like a quick, like high level overview of that.
Yeah. And just to be a little more specific and give a little more context, kind of by day, I'm a Google Ads manager and a media buyer. So that's kind of like my main part of my business. But then I also started Redefining Retirement as it's kind of a side hustle, but it is more than that just because I'm definitely putting a lot more time into it. And I think that it could be something on its own someday. And so from that perspective, I'm always trying to find ways to kind of cut time out of both because, I'm trying to do a couple things at the same time. I've got multiple clients to manage. So yeah. And I think part of what we're going to talk about is some of the ChatGPT stuff that I do, because that just speeds everything up, both for my client work and for my side project, the Redefining Retirement. So that on a day-to-day basis, yeah, I'm using AI all the time. A year ago, maybe 25% of the time. Now, man, I don't know. Trying to think, probably 50 to 75% of the day is spent doing stuff. Just because once you build out some systems, it's just almost kind of stupid not to, in a way, so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like longtime listeners of this show will know that I have been AI hesitant for a long time. Because, when it first rolled out, people were like, oh, this could write things for me and it could do all the work. And I'm like, what's the point of writing your own story if you're not going to write it? But like you said, I'm using it a lot more these days.
Yeah. And I understand the hesitancy. And I think that there's multiple ways to look at AI. You can look at it like, it's replacing all the stuff that you don't want to do as a replacement for yourself. but you can also look at it as an enhancement to yourself, right? So you're powering yourself up. You know, it's kind of like, I think about it like Super Mario Brothers, when you'd eat the you run into the flower, you know, and then you'd grow. Yeah. So I kind of look at it like that. And it's both things, right? It's also an educator. So there's so many different things that you can do with it. And when I say that I use it, 50 to 75% of the day now, it's like, it's not all for replacement activity. It's also for like ideation. It's also for things like, problem solving. Like, hey, you know what? Give me, it already knows so much about me. Like, I'll just have it look at what I'm doing. Am I missing something? Are there any blind spots? Or if I have a business idea or a product idea, I can, give me the pros and cons, tell me if this is a good move. So you're doing stuff like that. I've also entered in like, for instance, if I hear somebody in a podcast, I might ask ChatGPT if they're familiar with the author, right? And it would be, hey, are you familiar with the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss? It's like, yes, we are, Corey, or yes, I am, and it will kind of give me a layout, and you can kind of use it as a study guide. So there's just like, there's so many different things in all of those activities that I just described to you, may not have been possible in that short of a time frame, a year ago, or even 3-4 years ago. And also, to give you context, I started doing internet marketing back when I was working full time in the mid 2000s. I used to be a mechanical draftsman, and I did a lot of this stuff at night. And some of the stuff that I would work on at night with some of my first couple blogs and newsletters were, you can only do like one thing at night in a couple hours. Like, whereas now a lot of that stuff I could do what I did in a week, in a couple hours, so a lot of things have changed over the last, 11 to 15 years of doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and this is probably like something I will lay out in like a bonus episode or over at my audio notes podcast, because I was a developer and I don't do that day to day anymore, but like I still need some code snippets, and boy, oh boy, AI has been really good for that. But something you shared with me in our kind of like pre-interview call is that you have, that you're probably me, like, or I'm you 10 years ago, right? Something like that, right? Like,
yep.
So you had small kids when you were working at night, and even, you have even like 3 or 4 years ago. And I suspect that you also want to be a present dad while running your business. And so, like, but what did your workflows look like before AI? Like, was it like you didn't feel like you could get enough done in the day, or were you? I always worry about sacrificing family time for work.
Yeah, there's kind of like two parts to this, because there was a pre-full-time internet marketing guy and a post, when I went full time. So 2013 is when I went like full time. I'm all in, digital entrepreneur, whatever you want to call yourself, solopreneur these days. And before that, it was definitely very tricky. And my governor was my wife, like, what, why are you spending all this time and da, 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 you're always on your computer doing stuff. So I had very little balance at that point. So it was just grinding away. I was excited about what I was working on. I was doing this, and she couldn't see the value necessarily. It took her a long time, but she just looked at it as me just playing on the internet. Right. Which she doesn't think that way at all anymore, just for the record. but yeah, that was the thing. So just by her having to tell me that, I did not have that sort of a balance. I wasn't completely absent. I was still around. I was still at home. I'm doing stuff, helping with supper and going to, the sporting events and stuff like that, so for that stuff, yes. Now post, being full time, on the internet, I know it sounds weird to say it like that, on the internet, post that. when I was full time, well, then it opened up a lot more opportunity, because now it's like, you know what, I don't have to ask my boss if I can leave, to go to my daughter's gymnastics meet, because we got to leave town, or my son was a bowler. So, there's all these scenarios, or my wife had stuff that she needed to do. So like it would be my turn to take care of running the kids around town or cooking supper that night. So it made things a lot easier from that perspective. So just eliminating the full-time job and having a boss, was the biggest time save, or at least, quality time, generator, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah, cause there's so many things that I never, if I was not full-time doing what I'm doing and I wasn't able to, work online and control my own schedule, there's a lot of things that I probably would have missed out on, or just wouldn't have been involved in, over the years. And I take it for granted now. I mean, this is so 2013, I've been 11 years in. It's almost getting to the point where I kind of forget a little bit about what that was like. And it gets easier too, because my kids are now, I have one that's, out of college. I have one that's in college, and then I have one that's like, in the middle of high school, like a sophomore in high school. So there's a lot more time, but still, we still go, pick our daughter up from college. There's still, my other daughter still does, some sport activities and stuff like that. So we still can just, hey, leave in the day. We're going to go watch Maggie do cross country today. It starts at, we got to leave at 2:00. I'm going to ask my boss, hey, Corey. Yep. Corey. Okay. Go ahead. You got my permission. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that answer your question? I mean, I don't know if it's like,
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the thing. Like, everybody's business is different, and I'm like, I am starting what you are ending, right? Like, my daughter plays cello, and my son is starting baseball, and my kids are 8 and younger, and so I'm starting to enter the thick of it. Similar to you, like, I left my full-time job. I mean, I was always like a freelancer. I tell people I was like a realistic, less attractive Zach Morris when I was a kid. Like, I would figure out how to make money in high school, but like not by like renting out the parking lot to a car dealership, but by like burning McCDs for people. And I've like always carried that with me. And when I left my full-time job in 2017, it was basically like, I either work for this agency where we're doing work for like Fortune 100 companies, and then I have to either give up my side hustle or miss out on family time. And I decided to give up the full-time job and make my side hustle my front and center hustle, and not miss my daughter's first steps because I had to work late for someone. So I think like that, those decisions are really important. But then I think, my whole business is staked on this, and it's my experience and the experience of a lot of people as well. When you're the source of the paycheck, there's this extra pressure where you might feel like you have to work more to get that extra client so that you can make payroll this month.
well, that is a big one. And to just sit here and say that, like, I never experienced that and it was like easy and, oh my God, because I literally had a time when I was, I would say like about 2015 to 17, somewhere in there, where my wife asked me like how much money I had that month. And I literally only had like $500. That's all I earned. And you want to talk about feeling like the worst dad in the planet. That will do it right there. Yep. It was a low point. So I ended up having to take some side jobs, like some, go back, and it sucked really bad. Trust me. It definitely tested me. But, the silver lining was, one of those jobs turned out to be a sales related job. I answered an ad one day on Craigslist of all places. There was like an RV dealership that was
Nice.
That was like, hey, we need somebody to manage our website. I'm like, I'll tell you what, I'll manage a website. I also noticed that you're not doing Google ads. I could help you with that too, because I think that would really help you. And all I ask in return is that like you teach me how to do sales, right? So I was doing like hand-to-hand sales at an RV and boat dealership. And that was when the light bulb went off with me as far as earlier in my business. I just wasn't answering objections. I just didn't understand how to do sales very well. Mm-hmm. So I would have super feast and famine moments as a freelancer, right? Because you'd you'd have somebody and then all of a sudden, boom, 2 clients are gone. And you're like, oh, now what? So I learned how to, stay consistent with my prospecting. I also learned how to answer objections so that people were, because pre those days, it would be like, hey, sir, do you like Google ads? And they're like, no, it sucks. It doesn't work at all. And you're like, and before that, I'd be like, oh, okay, I guess you're not a client,
Right.
But then post sales knowledge, you're just like, well, why is that, sir, that you don't like it? And then they go on to tell you that their cousin Eddie, who learned, Google ads a week ago, started running the campaign. So you're like, oh, well, that's why it didn't work.
Right. Right.
So then now I could at least lead them down the path, and that just kind of broke everything open. So anyway, I'll stop there because I was kind of going off on a tangent for you, but just to give you an idea.
But I think this is helpful, right? Because it is that I went through it too, and I'm lucky that my wife supported me, and I had supportive friends too who were like, dude, like, you were born to be an entrepreneur. Like, this is who you are. Don't let like a rough patch set you off that path. And my wife is a nurse, and so like, we had money coming in, just not as much as I felt we needed. And so everybody, I think like a lot of people hit that, right? And I think it's like the internet hustlers tell us, just quit your job, just launch a website, you'll make money. And it's like, it's not that, right?
Well, I will tell you, like, that's like one big thing that I've noticed over the years is there was a lot of guilt about that. It's like, what am I doing wrong? I'm not moving as fast. And trust me, there were a lot of times where I stopped a little too short, or I didn't do a little bit of this or a little bit of that probably could have, magnified the success of a particular project. But one thing is you really have to be careful who your gurus are, because, like, let's just take Dan Coe. Nothing against Dan Coe. He's a great guy. Even a Justin Welsh, they don't have kids. They don't have kids. So if they're going to sit there and tell you that you need to, you need to do this, and, you have to do this, and just, hey, spend, I get it. And that's where they're at. They're maybe not Justin Welsh, but in Dan Coe's case, he's like a younger guy. So what does he have to worry about other than just making his business go every day? Or, go and drink with his buddies at night. I don't know, whatever. That's what I would have been doing at his age. Yeah. But yeah, once you have kids, other than the time factor, just like you said, there is an extra weight, because now you are, one of the main sources of income for your family. That makes the difference between whether your kids eat, whether they can sign up for gymnastics for thousands of dollars a year. It's crazy. Right. But, so yeah, it's definitely a shift. So you just be careful, who your gurus are. I always tell people that. So
yeah, I like that a lot, because it's true. And then like we always show the rosy right? Like, look, again, like, I don't want to like dump on anybody. They're obviously very successful, but like Dickie Bush posted something on Twitter a couple years ago that was like, here's how you make $1 million. Come up with a good idea. Your customers will sell it for you. And I'm like, that's obviously not true.
Yeah.
But people who are like just getting into it are like, oh, all I need is a good idea, or all I need is a website. And it's like, no, you need time to sell, and you need to understand the sales process.
It's a very tricky situation, and I've thought about it a lot, like especially with my new project with my Redefining Retirement, because it's a fine line that you have to walk, because there's that old line, like, you attract bees with honey, right? You sell people what they want, not what they need. And you have to, and that's like totally real. It's just like somebody like, hey, you really should be eating your vegetables every single day, buddy, because it's going to help you live longer, but it's like, no, I mean, you can't do that, because just, human nature isn't going to, they're not going to be like, oh yeah, you're right, man, I'm going to start eating broccoli every day because you said that was the key to living longer. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, no, you have to reframe that, to capture their attention, to get them to start to listen to you. And then eventually you give them like, hey, look, let's be real now, you have to do this. And it's the same thing with, I'm always trying to find that balance of, what is Corey being like, guru guy versus, like realist, right? Because I can't be too real, because, they don't want to know how much it sucked to be, telling your wife you only have $500 a month for the
Yeah.
month. But it was a very pinnacle, very, it needed to happen. And it was the thing that was able to propel me way past what I had for, just what I was making in a yearly salary, at my former position. So it's just part of the deal, but yeah.
Yeah. It almost, I want to get to the system next, but it almost reminds me of, I used to think that if I ate spinach, I'd immediately get muscles because of Popeye, right?
Yep.
Like the old Popeye cartoons. And it's like that. It's like, yeah, eating spinach is good for you, but you're not going to instantly be so strong that you could take on like a group of bad guys, right? So, it is finding that balance, right? Like how do we do need to capture the attention of our audience and then bring them in and show them the right way to do it.
And I think too, and I know we want to get to the next thing, but I guess the last thing I'll say is I really think that, discussions like this, like us on a video, on a podcast, goes a long way towards that. Right. And, when you can only use text a lot of times, you kind of have to grab their attention that way. But if you can get people to listen to a podcast and really hear my voice and hear your voice and kind of be like, okay, well, yeah, this guy, he's living proof that this works, but there are some things I have to accept, like if I'm going to actually get this thing to work, and not to say that there's not exceptions because there's those too, but so, yeah.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Okay. So let's move on to this system that you've built, right? So you went through a tough time in your business. You came out of it on the other side, but you can be working more efficiently, right? So tell us a little bit about what led you to build the system that you have now, and then like what's the input and the output, right? I think this is a really like, what do you put into it, and then what do you end up getting out of it?
So just to be clear too, this isn't a system that's been around since whatever, because it's only been around for maybe a year because I didn't have AI, in 2017. So when I saw AI, it was just like, oh my God, all of a sudden there is so much more in my business that I could do. In the old days, it's like, I couldn't just whip up a blog post or a content plan or whatever. I would have to go hire somebody, maybe get a copywriter to help my client and myself, maybe a developer, depending on what their technology stack was, so it's like, so yes, this is like in the last year, but like once you see it, you're like, oh, okay. Like now all of a sudden there's like a lot of plates I can spin where I could only spin one plate before. So that's kind of how it kind of developed. And when I started this Redefining Retirement, that was one of the reasons I started it. And that's why I think it's important for everybody to have a side hustle, even if you're at work and you're just sitting there every day, have something that you can play with on the side. Because with my newsletter, with all that stuff, I mean, it helps me use all the tools and just kind of stay relevant and stay in the game. And that's just kind of the way it happened. I slowly just started, geeking out on everything. I used to save like 1 million prompts, to do every task that I possibly could. That became a little tricky after a while, but the tools got better where you don't necessarily need the great prompts anymore. Or I started learning about like GPT projects, like ChatGPT projects. Claude has projects, and they also ChatGPT has custom GPTs. Right. So now instead of every time you go into like a blank and you're looking at a blank prompt and you have to give it all this information right away, like, okay, here's more about my business again, or here's more about my client. Here's what I'm trying to do. Instead of, seasoning it, for lack of a better term, with all this information, now you can build a lot of that information up front. You start with an offer, you start with a persona or two that you're trying to target, and then you kind of build out a business profile, and you have like basically the base of everything that you need. You put it into the project, and now you can start creating whatever it is you're trying to create, starting not from zero, basically. Does that make sense and answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. And I think this is like really important stuff, right? Because something that I still struggle with is like doing the appropriate amount of, let's say, user research for something I'm thinking about. And like nothing can replace talking to actual customers, but if you don't currently have actual customers or you're testing a new thing, it's kind of good to, I use the developer term of rubber ducking. And like this is a term I've
Mm.
learned that only developers use, but it's um developers, we talk out our problems a lot when we're trying to code, and so some developers would keep a rubber duck on their desk and talk to the rubber duck, and so
Okay.
that's why it's called rubber ducking. So I like to rubber duck a lot with ChatGPT. Right, I'm thinking about this. What about this? Oh, have you like what are 10 questions I should ask, sort of thing.
Yeah. And it's the rubber duck is throwing me off. I'm like, because you're saying the same thing that I would tell somebody when they're like, have a persona or an avatar in your
Yeah.
mind when you're writing. You're always writing or building to one person. Just put somebody in your head,
Yeah.
and that's who you're writing to. It makes it simpler, right? Because when you're trying to write for 1,000 people, it makes it way more difficult.
Yeah.
I'm a songwriter, same thing applies, right? So that's basically what you're talking about. And the great thing about like the project angle and the GPT angle is that, like, you know what, when you have tasks that you're going to be doing a lot of, you just build it up front, which it's not that big. You just use chat. You can use ChatGPT to build it all. And then that way it's not starting from ground zero. Because if you just go to ChatGPT and you just start with a brand new account with nothing, it knows nothing about you, and it will go find you all kinds of information. You know, like it'll give you anything. You know, so you need to put that lens on of like, okay, this is all the criteria that we need to fulfill. Now, give me the answer through that lens, and that's where the time savings comes in, like really quickly. And then once you just get a little bit more advanced, you can really start to dial in just separate parts of projects, you know, whether it's a social campaign or building like Google Ads campaigns. I have all kinds of tools that I just start to build them, and it just starts slicing time out of every one of those tasks very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get specific with a project. Something that we've talked about is your blog letters, right? Your blog post newsletters. I'd really like to focus in on that because people, writing is hard, right? It's a muscle that you need to work out, and I feel like for a lot of people, ChatGPT has made it easier. I don't use it for writing completely, but I will use it to proofread to make sure my idea is clear. And if I'm telling an anecdote, I usually like double check in ChatGPT, right? Oh, was it was it Jim Leyritz who caught this perfect game or whatever, or Jim Abbott who pitched the perfect or the no hitter, right? And he only had one hand or whatever. So those are things I already knew though. So, but
Yeah.
if I'm double checking something, right, that's a good place for ChatGPT. So tell us a little bit about your let's talk specifically about one of your projects, and I'd love to talk about your blog letters here too.
Okay, so how I would do it with and just to define what a blog letter is,
Yeah.
I think this term existed before I said it, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I just reinvented the wheel and everything's awesome. But it's just the idea of like, one of the reasons I use Beehive, for instance, is because they make it very easy for you to create a piece of content, and you can send it, simultaneously to an email list, and then it also posts as a blog. So if you just put a little bit more thought into it, you're saving a lot of time, because in the old days, and when I talk old days, I'm talking mid 2000s, where I got a WordPress site, and we're WordPress 2.0 and we're going way back.
Yeah.
And it's like, you would have to like, you'd have a blog post, and then you'd be like, okay, now I got to go fire up my, Aweber or MailChimp account. And then I got to, send that out so that they come back to my blog and read it. Well, now it's like it happens in one shot. So right there, that's a time savings. The other time savings that comes from that particular part of creating is that Well, if you think about it a little bit, you can kind of create your content so it's SEO optimized, right? So now you're giving yourself a shot with one piece of content. You're giving yourself a shot to kind of rank in search engines if you put that piece together correctly or in a certain way.
Yeah.
And SEO is going through a lot of changes right now because of the AI stuff, but there's also, AI will find your content as well. And I had my first lead, I shouldn't say lead, but my first subscriber from ChatGPT, like about 2 weeks ago. I was like, oh my God, look at that. And it was from an article that I didn't necessarily angle it towards AI search engine or whatever, but it just picked it up. And it so I don't know exactly how it got there, but I'll take it. But you can see like you're just making one piece of content. It starts to kind of branch out. And as far as what you're talking about before, as far as actually creating the content, well, that you make a good point. That's the same thing I do too, because I have a million quotes in my brain from like all these years, 17 plus years of marketing online. And I'm like, God, who did say that? Usually I go to Perplexity. I don't know. I kind of trust it just a little bit more, but I'll go over there. And same thing with statistics. If I see people, you'll see a lot of people throwing statistics out there. I'll go and I'll dig for the literal study that had that particular, because sometimes you'll find that statistics, they're just made up, so I will use it for that. And then as far as creating the content, I've done it both ways. When I first started Redefining Retirement, I was writing these and editing them myself, like I would in the old days when I wrote blogs. But as I learned more about AI, well, then I started, okay, how much of this can I do with ChatGPT? And I did write some like, here, ChatGPT, just write everything for me. And it was just like, no, like Claude was better. Like Claude, I think does a better job. ChatGPT is better now just in general, but no matter what, and understand that I am a songwriter. I have a couple albums and I think about, authenticity and cred, street cred, all that stuff. So this stuff is all circulating in my brain. And I need to make sure that something has a piece of my soul in it every time. Right. So it basically would eliminate your soul element into your content. I just made that up. I should maybe that's a blog post, but, but yeah, so I learned how to, there's a guy, I'm going to give him a shout out. Russ at jointheclick.com. It's like an AI marketing community. Like this is where I learned a lot of stuff from him about this, but he always talks about human in the loop. I've heard this from other people too. So not just him, but human in the loop, meaning that like, you can go and just tell AI to write the article for you, take it, paste it, slap it, but when you use a human in the loop, basically you do check-ins, right? Like create this part, check in, create this part, check in. You know what I'm saying? So you're not just letting it run free. You're guiding it along the way. So a lot of the way I would create content now is, yes, I might still have those days because I still write as much as I possibly can, almost every day if I can. Just old school, just get on the thing or on my iPhone when I'm out for a walk. But I've also started doing stuff like where I'll use like whisper flow, where I'll just like dictate something. I'll just gush stuff out of my brain onto, into Notion, or I'll just brainstorm just whatever my article idea is with my research. I'll, copy paste and put different, references in there. And then I'll go, okay, ChatGPT, let's just reorganize. Let's reshuffle this. It's, you know what I'm saying? Like it'll just go through. It'll be like, all right. And it already knows because along with those projects and like the custom GPTs, I built out like a rubric. I've built out, a style guide. So it knows exactly like this is how Corey writes. So I trained it on like years of my writing. I happen to just have blogs from, going way back almost 17 years, so not everybody has that, but, but over time. So now it gets way closer, to everything, but it's still my voice. It's still my original idea. It's just that it might be more easier to digest because I didn't have a sentence that ran on for like, 2 paragraphs, or
Right.
something like that, or
Yeah.
it'll make it just a little bit more clear by just moving things around. So I use it like that, but it still has my essence available, like in that. And that is the sweet spot. That is what we all have to keep in mind as humans as we go into this whole era, is that humans do business with humans. Humans want to talk to humans. So that is the secret sauce. So I want to protect that. So I'm not all in like with that. And I know some people do that, but whatever. Well, it is what it is.
Yeah, and it's the stuff that isn't going to stand out, I think, right? Like I had a spirited debate with my friend Alistair about a year ago, and towards the end of our debate, because I said, saying you used AI to write your book, like saying like AI wrote your book for you, essentially, is like saying you used a car to run a marathon, right? Like it's like, sure, you did it, but did you do it? And he said, like, what if I fed ChatGPT everything I've ever written up until this point? Then would you agree that ChatGPT wrote a book by me? And I said, no, because you have life experiences beyond what you wrote about. ChatGPT doesn't know what happened to you today or yesterday if you didn't write about it.
Yep.
And all of that is what makes us human and what makes good writing good writing.
One thing I learned too, when I was really skirting the edge of like, 100%, written by the AI, was, I would realize that some of the, like, people would ask me questions about my content. I'm like, you know what? I didn't write it. So then you don't remember all the bullet points.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yep.
oh crap. Like, you know what I mean? So then I started, then the street cred muscles started going off, and I started feeling like an imposter, because I'm like, well, I really need to focus on really understanding this stuff before I start to do it. And one of the ways that you do understand it is writing about it, or at least trying to get it out of your head. And I'm not going to say that I'm like this super like purist with this stuff, because, there are deadlines sometimes and you can't get every single thing going, but it's definitely something to think about. And it's definitely not something I'm doing 100%. So yeah, a lot of things to unpack in that little conversation we just had, but
yeah. So let's bring it back to the actual systems prompts. Because I suspect that people are listening and they're like, okay, like I've heard of projects. They haven't really worked for me. I still don't think Claude sounds like me or whatever. If someone wants to recreate kind of what you've done for themselves, like what do you recommend them do? What do you recommend that they do?
interesting. So you're just talking about like specifically the projects type of is that what you're?
Yeah. So like this, this kind of use of AI in the projects, they've helped you be more efficient, right? Like you said earlier that like the things that you do in a day used to take you a week, right?
Yep.
So like if someone says like, I want that for me, I spend 5 hours writing my newsletter every morning. And I feel like it's good, but I feel like I can do it in less time. Like what should they do? What have you done to solve that problem?
Okay. One I'll think that I thought of, like when you were talking earlier about like trying to get feedback from actual people, which I highly suggest, talk to your customers. But I would say this though, that like I have a prompt that like, if you want to, go out there and look for the voice of the customer, right? So you can use like a deep research on ChatGPT, and you say, okay, here's a couple competitors. I want you to scour Reddit, Google business reviews, Quora, like whatever. And it will go and it will think for like 20 minutes, and it will bring back basically what your client or your customers are talking about in their language, right? So that would be one way to do it. So then now you have this document that you can dump. I like to save everything like in a Google Doc, download it onto my hard drive. So I always have it no matter where I'm at in an LLM. I can always upload it. So that would be that right away gets you very fast. That would have taken days, probably,
Right.
maybe weeks.
Yeah.
I don't know. Depends how deep you're going to go. Now it takes maybe 20 minutes with the deep research situation. As far as like the other stuff, like I was mentioning before, like I'm going to go and build a persona. I'm going to go build an offer. And how I would start is go find offers that you like. Like if you are, and maybe I take this for granted because I've been marketing for so long. It's like, I can always think of frameworks that I always liked. Going back like 10, 15 years, I'm like, oh God, there was this guy that Jeremy Schumacher from Shoe Money used to do, but I don't even know if he's around anymore, but he was a big internet marketer back in the day. And it's like, oh, that's right. And if I have a PDF somewhere buried in my hard drive, I might I'll actually tell ChatGPT to like define it, break it down, put it into a framework. And then I'll go and I'll start like workshopping it into a prompt. Right. And then that can help me create the documentation that I need. If you know of a customer that has a really good offer that you like, you can take that particular offer, tell ChatGPT to basically define it, break it down. Maybe you can grab 2 or 3 offers from somebody that's in your and have it compare them both. And then go and tell it to create an offer in a certain structure. It helps to have frameworks. That's one of the things that I learned from all the different AI courses I've taken is how to have like a good framework. But you kind of know this stuff. You can go find blog posts. You can find Notebook LM is great for this. Like if you know there's a YouTube video out there describing like how to create something in a specific way, go grab it, dump it into Notebook LM. And now they have like mind maps, right? So you have a complete structure, and then you just go and you create, you just tell it, create an offer for this, but here, change these 2 things. And now you make a template, you download that, you slap it in your, wherever you want to save it. And then you upload it into a project. And now from that point on, you always have that as your reference, right? That is my offer, or that's a framework I can use to create another offer. Same thing with the persona. You can find the exact definition of a persona. There's probably a million articles and a million YouTube videos out there explaining how to create, how the best way to do a persona. It might be a little different if you're selling shoes versus selling, a $500,000 piece of, CNC machinery. It's going to be a little different, but go find one that you think is good, build your template around that. And then that's what you would use to start populating your project so that it knows more about you and your business and your offer and all that stuff. So is that kind of what you're looking for?
Well, so I think let's I want to turn this into like a couple of steps, right? So like, it sounds like take a problem you have, workshop it with ChatGPT, and then essentially leverage ChatGPT to build out the project instructions, right? And I think if someone hasn't used a project in either ChatGPT or Claude, the way it works is you are essentially creating a folder with folder-wide instructions, right? You've got project instructions, and you're like, for this project, I hate the URL whatever. Like, you're a marketing expert, but everyone tells me it works. Like,
yeah, you have to give it instructions, right? Like, there's a million different, I shouldn't say there's a million, but there's dozens of frameworks to use, the role, goal, all that, those types of things. You still want to give it instructions as to what exactly you want to do. That also is another thing. Like, one of the coolest ways I've seen people explain how to create instructions for either the custom GPT or for the projects is to go find job description. Like, say, like you go on like I'm trying to think, like there was a great website and it's buried somewhere in my notes.
LinkedIn Jobs.
There was one where it described all these jobs. It was a giant directory, and I can't remember it. It's buried way deep into my notes somewhere. But you would just go on there and it described everything perfectly, because people would use that to build their resumes off of, or they would use it to build
like job descriptions.
Yeah, or an employer would use it as like a template to create a job description too, right? It's like, hey, we're looking for whatever. Here are your duties. Here are your da 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 da. Well, just go grab something like that. And all this kind of led me to just trying to document my stuff more. Like I use Notion a lot because I'm always trying to write down my processes as much. And I was horrible at this the last 10 years, but it's like, but man, I'll tell you what, when you start doing this, now it's very easy to just start dragging that stuff into ChatGPT or into any AI that you're using. And now it's like, you see how I'm saying? Like, but you would start from there, like with the role. It's it's kind of crazy, but like once you start using AI a lot more, you start to realize you can use it for everything. Like I can use it to create something to help me create other things. You know what I mean? It's like it starts to blow your mind after a while, but but that's how I would do it. Just start from like zero and just start building out.
Yeah. I really like that a lot. Cause I think like it's one of the things that ChatGPT does is help with blank slate syndrome or blank canvas syndrome. But when you're starting a project, you can almost feel that way. And so like just getting the start of like, hey, I need a project to help me with my podcast show notes or my marketing efforts. So I really like that. Okay, so I want to wrap up here. As usual, we're going over time. But if I want to ask you, I know you mentioned it earlier, but like how much time do you feel like this saves you in a week, or let's not even just time, right? Like what is the positive impact it's had on your business and your life since implementing or since like integrating this stuff into your workflow a year ago?
It allows me to do more, which is a super obvious answer, but it's like, and I'm able to offer more, what am I looking for? More services to other people. Like for instance, on the Google Ads side, on my media buying side of my career, it's like in the past, 2-3 years ago, like I had clients, it's like, I'm going to have to convince them to go and hire a copywriter for, who knows how many, hundreds, thousands of dollars to hire a copywriter. Now we can get pretty damn close. I'll just hop on a call with a client and we'll just talk like we are right now on like Riverside or name your, video conferencing. And now we have a transcript. Now I can take that and I can create that. I can create all kinds of content out of what we just talked about. I can use it to build landing pages, copy and all that kind of stuff. Like I have a custom software company. This is exactly what happened with us. And they have all these case studies, but they're programmers, dude. They don't want to sit there and like hammer away on case studies and whatever. So I'm like, here, give some to me. Boom. And I just started, went and found a great example of a case study. And then I just went and built their case study with that template. So that's one huge way. Other than that, I would say that a big time saver is it's kind of like there's a checks and balances kind of a way that I use AI as well. A couple of weeks ago, I just did a blog post on this. It was like a meta coach, and you would go ask it, like, hey, am I staying on the right path? And this is a huge time saver that you can't really put a number on it, because once you start veering off the path, you don't know how much time that's going to cost you because, you don't know what you don't know, but it will keep me in line, right? I don't trust it 100%, but I would say 80 to 90% of the way there. It's like, it understands what I'm trying to do. And it's like, hey, maybe you don't want to, write a blog post, or you're starting to get off topic a little bit, so like just ideation, save me time from going down the wrong path or choosing the wrong business opportunity because it already knows my skills. It knows me. And those are more higher level probably than what you're looking for, but
yeah. So have you been able to like, take more vacation, spend more time with your wife? Have you, you don't got to give me numbers, but like, have you been able to work less or make more? Like what's something that this system has really done for you tangibly?
Yeah, definitely make more because, using some of my client stuff, it's like, I can just like, here's another service I can offer you that I couldn't offer you a year, last year or 2 years ago.
Right.
More time. Yes, I can get my work done faster. So I definitely have more time to spend with other people. with my family, with my friends or whatever. But I would say though, that sometimes that ends up turning into like, well, now I've got more time to create more stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you start to feel that
yeah.
empty space with more stuff to do. So, and I don't know, I think that's just a product of like being a solopreneur and just being geeky about this stuff like I am. But definitely in money wise, yeah, I mean, I'm able to, I have more output, especially with my Redefining Retirement newsletter, because now it's like I can put out more content. I can start to monetize that content in different ways. There's 5-6 different ways you can monetize stuff. Affiliate income, all this stuff that I can do now because I have more output on that particular platform. So those are just kind of like some surface level kind of stuff, but it's incalculable, I think, when you really start to think about it, like actually how much time it saves. And so, yeah. It's like asking somebody that went from riding a horse to work every day, to driving a Ferrari, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, well, yeah, after you start riding in the Ferrari, it's like, oh yeah, it did take me a day to get to work instead of like 2 minutes. So I don't know. I don't know if that's even a good analogy, but
No, it makes sense, right? It's like, I often think about how horrible, if I think about like the medical advancements we've made in the last 50 to 100 years. And I'm like, man, how terrible would it have been living in the 1800s? And I'm like, you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, leeches are the way to treat yourself, right? Like you wouldn't know any better. So
yeah,
I guess it is hard to like quantify that without seeing the results. I think that's really interesting.
Just even internet and social media. It's like, I'm a Gen Xer. That's why I have my blog about, talking to other Gen Xers, because we're like the last generation to understand, like, for lack of a better word, the analog world, right? I didn't have the internet until like I was in my late 20s, early 30s. And that's early internet, like dial up, like, like that kind of thing. And now the fact that I have like, thousands of computers on my phone. I mean, it's just like, it just blows your mind, but it was not like that. It's just,
yeah.
So yeah, it's hard to really wrap your head around it. And this has just taken us into another stratosphere, just the internet alone was like, society changing. This is, it's not even going to be comparable. So anyway, I can ramble all day, and I know we're over time. So
yeah, well, I mean, I appreciate this. Thank you. I think that the listeners probably have a lot of ideas. I know that like what you've talked about here has, or will, I guess, improve my approach to how I create projects, because my prompts are generally pretty sparse anyway. I'm told that like you need to be very specific and clear, and I don't think I am that yet. And so I'm really excited to implement some of what you talked about here. If people want to learn more about you, where can they find you?
I would say you check me on LinkedIn. Corey Koehler is my name. You'll see it in the show notes. It's not easy to spell. It doesn't look like Koehler. It looks like Kohler, actually. That would be one place. I am on Twitter, but I don't talk about that one a whole lot. I'm there once in a while. But I would also just check out redefiningretirement.io. Once you go there, you're going to be directed in different, you'll be able to figure out anything else about me. And I did, by the way, I don't know if you were going to mention this or not, but I gave like, I made like a little handout for everybody that was listening to the show. And it's just basically like my content stack for my blog letter. It just gives you like some of the tools that I mentioned today, and just a few pointers here and there. So you guys can get that. And I won't tell you what the URL is because it's not perfect. So, Joe's going to put it in the show notes.
I'll put it in the show notes. I'll also set up a redirect. So it'll be streamlined.fm/Corey, Corey, streamlined.fm/Corey. But it'll be in all the places where you're listening to this, in the description, the show notes and stuff like that.
Yep.
So Corey Koehler, thank you so much for joining us today and for spending some time with us. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I love doing podcasts anytime. So, and you're so easy to talk to. We learned that in our first intro, because like you said, you are almost exactly 10 years behind me, like with the kids and the business. And it was just like, so it was like, oh, okay. And thank you, Elizabeth, for
Yes.
hooking us
Shout out
up
to
for
Elizabeth
sure.
Howell. Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to her. She figured this whole thing out. So
Yeah, awesome. If she has like Podscan or something, this will show up in her alerts now because we've mentioned her. So
nice.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Thank you, Corey. And thank you to everyone listening. Until next time, I hope you find some space in your week.